My husband, Mark, thought he was helping his younger brother, Jax, get back on his feet. He gave him the guest room and a key to our home. But Jax didn't come here for a fresh start. He came for the one thing Mark had that he didn't. My life with Mark was stable, predictable, and, if I'm honest, hollow. Mark worked the night shift as a foreman at the plant, leaving the house at 10 p.m. and returning at 6 a.m. It was a routine that left me alone in our suburban home, surrounded by expensive furniture and silence. Then came Jax. Jax was Mark's younger brother, the troublemaker the family had whispered about for a decade. He was reckless, nomadic, and carried an intensity that Mark completely lacked. When he showed up on our doorstep with a single duffel bag and a crooked grin, Mark didn't hesitate to offer him the guest room. Just for a few weeks, Mark had said. But the moment Jax walked through the door, the air in the house changed. For the first 3 days, we lived in a state of hyper-awareness. I would feel Jax's eyes on me while I made dinner, a heavy, unblinking gaze that made the back of my neck tingle. He didn't follow the rules of the house. He stayed up late, played music low in the basement, and seemed to be counting the minutes until the clock hit 10 p.m. Mark, oblivious as always, would kiss me goodbye and head to work, leaving me in the house with a man who felt more like a predator than a guest. Jax didn't hide his disdain for Mark's perfect life. He doesn't deserve this house, Jax told me one afternoon in the garden, and he certainly doesn't deserve you. It was a Tuesday night. The rain was drumming rhythmically against the roof, a sound that always made the house feel more secluded. Mark had just pulled out of the driveway. I was in the kitchen drying a glass when I felt the vibration of footsteps behind me. I didn't need to turn around to know it was him. "You look tired of playing the part," Jax said. His voice was a low, rough baritone that seemed to vibrate in the small space between us. He didn't move away when I turned. He stood his ground, forcing me to acknowledge him. He began to talk about the years he spent away, the things he'd seen, and how he had spent every family holiday imagining what it would be like to finally have me alone. I went to my bedroom, hoping the locked door would be enough to reset the boundaries. But at midnight, there was a knock. It wasn't the hesitant knock of a guest. It was the rhythmic, demanding knock of someone who knew exactly what they wanted. I opened the door. Jax stood there in the dimly lit hallway. The thumbnail moment. He didn't wait for an invitation. He stepped inside, the weight of his presence overwhelming the room. "Mark is 4 hours into his shift," he whispered. "He's not coming back until dawn. Are you going to keep pretending you aren't waiting for me?" He pushed the door shut behind him, and the lock clicked, a sound that signaled the end of my life as a faithful wife. This section of the script requires the slowest narration. Describe the contrast between the life Mark built and the chaos Jax brought into the room. He didn't treat me with the polite, routine care that Mark did. Jax was a storm. He pushed me onto the bed, the familiar sheets feeling foreign under the weight of a different brother. The forbidden nature of it wasn't a barrier. It was the catalyst. Every touch was a rebellion against the years of boredom and the good wife mask I had worn. For the next 40 minutes, the narration explores the sensory reality of the night. The sound of the rain, the heat of the encounter, and the whispered confessions of a man who had waited his whole life to take what belonged to his brother. He told me that he wasn't leaving, that the guest room was just the beginning. By the time the clock struck 3 a.m., the betrayal was complete. The first light of dawn began to gray the curtains. Jack stood by the window, watching the street. He looked back at me, no longer the troublemaker guest, but the man who held my future in his hands. "He'll be home in 20 minutes, Jack said, his voice cold and calm. I watched him walk out and head back to the guest room. I had to move quickly. I smoothed the sheets, fixed my hair, and went down to the kitchen to start the coffee. When Mark walked through the front door, smelling of the plant and cold air, he hugged me like he always did. "Everything quiet last night?" he asked. I looked over his shoulder and saw Jax standing in the hallway, wearing a clean shirt and that same crooked grin. "Quiet as a grave, Mark," Jax said. I realized then that the true heart story wasn't about a one-night mistake. It was about the fact that I was now living in a house with two brothers, one who owned the name on the deed and one who owned the secrets in the dark.